Oh, so hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar where we're going to be talking about how to manage payroll, crew leave and hours of rest as part of the Voly Crew Solutions and workrest platforms. My name is Stuart Willis, I'm the Assistant CRM Manager at Voly, and I'll be joined by our Head of European Business Development, Nicole Romanet, and we also have Peter Edwards with us, who joins us as the Director of Voly Crew Solutions as our resident payroll expert in compliance. So thank you for joining us, Peter. As always with our webinars, feel free to drop in any questions in the chat as we go through. We'll do our best to either answer those questions as we go through, or there will be a Q&A section at the end of the session, so you'll be able to get your questions in there. We'll get them answered as quick as we can. So to kick us off, I'm going to pass over to Nicole, who's going to run us through the Voly Crew Solutions before I step back in at the end to run through the workrest platform, cover the leave management and hours of rest side of things. So with that said, Nicole, over to you.
Thanks, Stu. Just share my screen here.
There we go. That's good.
There we go.
Perfect.
Good. So today I'm going to spend, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes talking about Voly Crew Solutions, who we are, what we do, where did we come from. Some of you may know, some of this might be completely new to you. Voyonic was first established in 2007. We're the first, and then purchased by Voly last year. We're the first company in Guernsey to get MLC certified, and we're also ISO certified. Our team in Guernsey is made up of a wealth of experience with, frankly, people that have been in the industry a very, very long time. We have a deep understanding of the employment laws and the different rulings within that. We have about 5,000 plus 5,000 crew under our responsibility at the moment. And when we do the crew employment, we're doing from head to toe the whole life cycle of the crew employment. What we do besides the payroll is we are involved in background checks that are becoming ever more necessary and prevalent in our industry, which is really good to see. With regards to our Seafarer Employment Agreement, we have MLC compliant employment agreements, which we can use when you take Voly Crew Solutions. You can use our template, you can modify our template. Maybe you have a template of your own that you like to use. Absolutely no problem. We can do either one. We also handle who Peter on the call happens to be quite an expert in the disciplinary and grievance procedures. So again, this can get quite, let's say, tricky and time consuming, these types of things. We're highly qualified in doing this with the level of experience that we have within the team. We've got the real life experience on our side to attend to these things that, as I say, can get quite tricky in the procedures. With regards to payroll, we're dealing with 90 jurisdictions with multiple currencies. If you have a jurisdiction that maybe we are not dealing with, we definitely will find a partner to cover your jurisdictions. To date, we haven't had an issue with anyone that we haven't been able to deal with. We also specialize in the French and the Maltese flags, knowing that the social security obligations for both France and Malta are complicated and necessary. We've got the staff in place to cover the questions and the complications that arise with these different flags. What makes us unique is that within the setup of your employment company, we use an incorporated cell structure. So that means that you're legally separated and protected entity. So your assets are secure and shielded from liabilities. If you're an owner, for example, that has multiple assets, each asset individually is separated from any liabilities from the other assets. So they're not in conflict with each other or disrupting each other. So what does that mean is that Voly Crew Solutions is now falling quite squarely and importantly under the Voly Group. of products that we offer. This allows us to reach out to a wider level of expertise, of product development, and it's quite exciting for us as we go forward to see what the payroll product that we'll be able to provide through workrest and Voly Crew Solutions and the Voly Group platform has to offer. In closing, we talk a little bit about our budgeting. So knowing that the yacht's operational budget, 33% of that practically is normally covered by the crew payroll. We want you to feel like you have a trusted partner in us. We know the importance of the payroll, getting it done correctly, getting it done on time, correct SEAs, correct terminations, and also within that structure, we've got workrest. So what's one of the most, let's say, complicated things with payroll? It's not normally the money side of it. It's often the leave accrual side of it because it's complicated, because money is pretty straightforward, whereas leave, do I accrue a day here or not here on this type of travel, this contract, different boat, same vessel, different contract, all sorts of things. From my opinion, workrest offers the most flexible piece of software to manage crew leave on the market. And with the Voly Crew Solutions, we do offer that as a part of your contract with us, is the workrest leave platform, which in my closing, Stu is going to give you a demonstration of.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Nicole. That's perfect. Great segue in. That's perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to dive into the workrest platform. Here we go. So for us, when it comes to leave management, kind of the three most important elements that we have and we've kind of factored into our systems is basically the first one being having an easy to view leave schedule. So a really clear way for everyone to come in and look at leave and rotation schedules over the course of the year. That's priority number one. The next one is having a highly customizable way to schedule leave, which then accounts for all the different and various ways that crew leave can be scheduled. And then finally, it's getting an accurate and clear view of the accrued leave balances, both from an admin perspective as well as a crew perspective as well. So giving clarity for everyone to see how much leave has been accrued for any given day and time, and also to have confidence that that accrued balance is correct and being able to sense check it in a very easy way. So those are kind of our three core principles of this. So if we break them down individually, the first one that we've got is having the easy to view leave schedules. So we've had a leave management platform in the market for just over 5 years now on the workrest side of things. And we've had various iterations of the views and profiles that we have for this. And the one that we found that resonates most with admins and crew is essentially this Gantt chart, which is where we're looking at here. So the Gantt chart we found is really the easiest way to view leave and rotation schedules from a top level perspective. So we're looking at a year's view of a vessel's leave and rotation schedule, essentially, for the deck crew. So we've got crew running down on the left-hand axis here, and then we're obviously looking at the year 2025, and we've got the months running along the top here. And then crew leave is essentially entered into the Gantt chart as these colored horizontal rows. And then the color coding system we've got is essentially your two most commonly used leave types, being rotation and paid leave, have their own color. So purple is rotational leave, paid leave is this kind of red color, and then any other types of leave is accounted for by this green color here. And then over on top of those leave periods, we also highlight the number of days that the leave takes. So we've obviously got here at the top 45 days of rotational leave. On top of that. So you get all the information that you need from a top level shown to you as soon as you come onto this Gantt chart. You get the core bits of information that you need. If I hover my cursor over the leave period itself, it will also show me my exact start and end dates. And again, it will highlight the type of leave that it is. So for any type of leave, so you've got here compassionate leave, shoreside training, you'll get all that information when you're looking at a top level perspective. You can then also filter this chart. So if you want to look at rotating positions, so it could be your rotating chief officers or rotating deck crew, you can filter this chart to see just the crew that you want to see the leave schedules for. Again, it's a nice way of just filtering this down and making the Gantt chart even easier to view and understand. So we're looking at a yearly view. You can also, if you want to dig into more kind of a closer look, you can see it at a quarterly view, or you can see it at a monthly view as well. And the monthly view is great, obviously, if you want to dig into looking at handover days or the exact rotational handovers that crew may have. The monthly view is great to see it on a day-by-day basis. There's also a couple other benefits when looking at a monthly perspective. So where it says balance, deduct, accrues, and earns at the top here, if I hover my cursor over any day, it will show me on that day how many crew for each position can be found on the vessel on that day. So again, it's a nice bit of information that we're showing you on the top of the Gantt chart there. So if I jump back out to the year, this is certainly the view that we find most vessels use most often, and it certainly is their basis for everything when it comes to scheduling leave as such from that front. So the next most important thing is having a kind of highly customizable way of scheduling leave. Certainly, we found that each vessel has different ways of setting leave and different types of leave that they like to use, different ways of representing travel and what travel should then do to the accrued leave balance. So for us, when we're looking at this, we have just over 40 or so different types of leave that you can schedule. Obviously, the core ones, which I've touched on, you've got rotation and paid leave. And then if I go to the settings icon here and go to leave, I'm going to jump this into a separate tab. I can then, if I come to types at the top of the page here, these are the 40 or so different types of leave that you can schedule. So this really brings us into the whole customizable element of the leave scheduling element. So on the left-hand side, you've got the different type of leave that you can schedule when you come to schedule leave. And then alongside that, you've got columns that are highlighted. So does the leave accrue leave or not? Yes or no? Does it earn a salary? Does it deduct leave? And if it does deduct leave, at what rate does it deduct leave? So 1 would signify that for every day of leave, it deducts a day from the balance, whereas a 0.5 here would show that it's a half a day deductible. So it would deduct half a day for every day that you assign it. So you can see here, naming convention wise, we've taken the types of leave that people have given to us. So this is all based on the feedback that we've had over the years. You've got things like compassionate leave, unpaid leave, medical leave. So again, we've kind of captured the majority of types of leave that you may want to schedule. If there's something that you have on the vessel that we don't have, we can always add it into the system to make sure that the system works for you and your naming convention needs on that side of things as well. So if I jump back to the Gantt chart just to show how we would schedule leave. So to schedule leave, it is as simple as coming to a crew members row and then clicking into the Gantt chart, which brings open the leave scheduler. So the leave scheduler is broken into 4 different sections, which are highlighted at the top here. So you've got outbound, leave, inbound, and review. So outbound and inbound relate to the travel elements of the leave. The leave section relates to the type of leave that you're scheduling. And the review section at the end just highlights what we're scheduling. And there's also some additional settings that we can apply to the leave, which I'll cover in just a second. So if we jump back to the outbound, again, so this relates to the travel part of the leave. So if I come in here, I can say that I want to start a travel day on the 27th of Jan. You can then say the travel day should be 2 days. You can go up to 3 days here. I can assign a flight to say the crew member is taking a flight here. And you can also add in flight information such as airports, departure times, flight numbers. You can also add in comments at the bottom here relating to this leave, this travel period. And then if I jump to next, we come to the leave section. So here you can set the type of leave that you want to schedule. So if I select rotation here, and this will just reiterate what this leave will do to the crew member's balance. So does it accrue? Does it earn a salary? Does it deduct? And if so, at what rate it deducts? So you can see the difference here with the rotational leave, the crew member does not accrue leave when they're on it, versus paid leave, typically they would accrue leave. So yes, you can see here that it does accrue leave for this. Underneath, you've got the start of the leave itself. So this is dictated by the travel day that we've set. So we don't have to set anything for this. And then underneath, you can say it could be the duration could be 1 week, it could be 1 day, or you can just set an end date in the calendar underneath if easier. And then you can also add in a comment there in relation to this leave period. Same again with inbound travel. Very similar to the outbound, you can set flights, flight details, and travel days. And then finally, we get to the review step here. So again, this is just reiterating the bits of information that we've added in. And then underneath, you've got a couple of settings. So this travel setting here, so travel time accrues leave, yes or no. So this allows you to customize whether the travel days should accrue leave or not. So if it's saying yes, those travel days will accrue leave. If we say no, those travel days will neither accrue nor deduct. So they're considered neutral days. So nothing will happen to their accrued leave balance over the course of those travel days. Alongside that, you can assign an approval process. So you can say this leave period, although I'm entering it as an admin, it needs to be approved by somebody else. So you can set who that is here, notify them via an email. So it's going to send this information to them to say this leave period needs to be approved. Will allow them to then go into the dashboard and approve the leave period. I can also notify the crew that I'm creating this leave period for. So I'm creating the leave for Jane, and I can send Jane an email with this information in. I can also send this information to somebody else. So it could be a head of department or anyone else that's impacted by this leave period. And that's essentially it. So it's a really customizable way that you can go and schedule leave and account for all the different types of leave that you may have and factor in, obviously, the difference with travel days and how your vessel operates with travel days. So once you've got the leave, once you've scheduled the leave, it will obviously appear in the Gantt chart as such in the way that all these other leave periods have done. And then if you need to change the leave period, so obviously a very common use case is that a vessel will enter leave periods over the course of the year, but as things change, they may need to change end dates to account for any changes in flights or rotation. So it's a really easy process to do that on the system. You can firstly come into hover over the leave period, click into it, hit the edit button, which brings us back into the leave scheduler. I can then dive back into the section I need to change the end date, or add a flight, whatever you need to do. You can do that here. I can also, if I jump to a monthly view, so I can get to the monthly view either by selecting month on this filter bar up here, or I can just set the month in the calendar, which brings me to the months view. And then if I need to change, let's say the beginning date of this leave period here, I can just click and drag to change the leave dates, and that will update on that side. Again, so a nice and quick way that you can go and change any of your start or end dates of a leave period. So that's essentially how you would schedule leave. And then finally, so again, one of the core components of this is having that clear and transparent view of accrued leave balances that both admins and crew can see. So kind of the starting point for you being able to do this is essentially the contract section. So each crew member would have a contract within workrest that is essentially like a simplified SEA contract. So it includes things like start dates, trial periods. You can set the type of contract, you can set the entitlement rates, and that then will allow us to calculate the crew member's accrued balance over the course of the year. So if I just dig into the contracts really quickly, so the contract is split up into these 6 sections, and I can navigate to each of them just by tapping on the top here. So let's start from the beginning. So you can set obviously the start date. So when should this contract begin? You can add an end date, add anniversary dates, and things like that. You can also then add trial periods. So you can set a duration of a trial period. You can then also dictate whether or not the crew member should accrue leave during the trial period. And if they should it be the same or a different rate from their regular contract? So you can set all those specifics to a leave period, trial period here, sorry, at that section. And then the calculation step. So this is really the bulk of the contract. And this is, again, a very customizable section where you can go and make it very specific to your needs. So at the top here, we're essentially setting how much leave the crew member should accrue, either at a daily or monthly rate. So the 2 core different types of contract that we have available are what we call a permanent and a rotational contract. And they relate to how the crew member should accrue leave. So a permanent contract, the crew member will accrue leave evenly over 365 days, regardless of whether the crew member is on leave or on the vessel. And in relation to that, a rotational contract will only accrue leave when the crew member is on the vessel. And then next to that, you've got your annual leave entitlement. So if we were to create a time-for-time contract or a 2-2 contract, you would essentially say their annual leave entitlement is half a year, so 182.5 days. And then it's showing us underneath, this is the calculation. So we're showing you for every day that the crew member works, they will accrue 1 day of leave. And that's it here. So, and then if I change this, you can see obviously that does change the daily accrual rate quite significantly. So you can flick between those again, just to check to make sure that accrual rate is as you would expect. You can see if I change my annual leave entitlement, my daily accrual rate underneath changes. So you can make sure that you've got that set correctly as you go through. You can also, rather than setting a day-by-day accrual rate, you can also select a calendar month accrual rate. So depending on the contract, the crew member may earn, let's say, 5 days a month, regardless of the length of the month. So you can say, rather than day by day, they would accrue 5 days for every month. And then what the system will do in the background is change the daily accrual rate depending on the length of the month. So that will all happen automatically, and it will just ensure that the crew member accrues the 5 days of leave each calendar month. And then you can also set next to that, you can set if the crew member doesn't complete the month. So let's say they work from the 1st to the 15th, you can say, rather than obviously accruing the 5 days for the completed month, they will accrue 15 times this number here. So you can set that and be ultra specific with how the crew member should accrue leave. And then underneath, once you've done that, and once you've set it for crew, you can save this as a contract profile. You can then apply this to other crew when you need to create contracts for them. So rather than creating this individually for each crew member, what we typically see is a vessel will have 3 or 4 different type of contract profiles. So time for time contracts, 3 on 1 off contracts, or 90-day leave entitlement contracts. You can create them initially and then apply them to other crew as and when they need to over the course of the year. So again, really easy to use that system. Lastly, you have the adjustments. So if nothing is entered into here, the contract will start with a balance of 0, but you can also set an opening balance if not 0. So you could say, actually, they start on a balance of 10. So this is useful if you're transitioning from another system into the workrest system. They may have a balance that they've already accrued from another system. So you can bring that balance over at the adjustment section here. And then finally, we get to the travel section. So you can also assign a flight balance to crew. So a crew member may, for example, have 6 flights a year, which could be 3 return flights. So you can set that balance for flights in this section here. And then lastly, we get to the review step. So this just reiterates the specifics of this contract, allows you to check anything before submitting it as a completed contract. And then once we've done that, as you go ahead and start using the system, start scheduling leave, we will then be able to provide you with an accrued leave balance. So there's a number of different ways that you can access the accrued leave balance. The core one, certainly in regards to payroll, is the summary page. So this summary page looks at a given month. So here we're looking at June 2025, and it's saying within this month, these crew all have contracts, and they've been on board for this many days, they've had this many travel days, this many leave days, they've accrued this much leave, they've had this many salary days, and then at the end of this period, so at the end of this month, their balance is this on the right-hand side. So it's looking at a month. You can also see it for a calendar year or a custom date range. So you may want to see a crew member's contractual year, which would be different from a calendar year. So you can go and set any start and end date, and then the system will just update and show you within that time frame how many days they've been on board, how much leave they've taken, and at the end of it, how many days have they accrued as such. So that's a really cool page that we see vessels using. And then you can also export this. So you can export it either as a CSV or as a PDF format here. And so that's kind of a cool page when we're looking at accrued balances. The other page that is useful from a balance perspective is the reports page. So the reports page is essentially giving you all of the information for a specific crew member that you may want to look at. So again, the summary page was showing you all of the crew. The reports page is great for looking at one individual crew member. And at the top, you've got their summary. So this is just the information we saw on the summary page, but again, just highlighted for this particular crew member. You can also see their contractual details here at the top as well. And then underneath, we've got a calendar format. So this is the calendar format for their year. And then essentially it's showing you, so there is overlap here with the hours of rest product. So these are work days. You may be able to see that the numbers on this calendar are or have a color coding system. So we've got green, red, and blue, and those relate to the types of work day that the crew member has logged as such. So a green is a compliant work day, red is a non-compliant work day, blue is a rest day, and then we also have leave periods here shown in the same color coding system that we showed you for the Gantt chart. So this crew member's obviously got some rotational leave over the course of the year, which you can see. And then if I hover my cursor over any day in the calendar, where it says travel here, it then updates to showing the balance. So this is the accrued balance for this crew member. Again, it's a really nice way of it seeing any given day and time. You can then see how the balance changes based on the types of days that have been logged and the type of leave that's been logged. So again, a nice, useful way to go and sense check any balances for a particular crew member. So looking at this calendar format, this is very similar to the way that crew would look at their own accrued balance. So if I jump to the workrest app, so this is the browser version of the workrest app, and this is essentially the crew's view of using the system. So I've just logged into a crew member's app, and then on the app itself, if I jump back to June, you'll see here, so I've got a leave period here logged. This is a black leave period, and I've got compliant work days here, non-compliant work days here. And if I tap on any day, and then let me just get out of that. So if I tap on any day, up at the top here, you'll see show accrued leave balance. If I tap on that, as a crew member, it's then going to show me my accrued balance on that day. And if I jump to a day in the future and tap it, again, it will update to show me what my balance is for that day. So again, they can go and navigate to any day, past, present, or future, and see that accrued leave balance for any day and time. They can also see their leave periods scheduled within the app as well through the calendar format. So again, they get access to not only their leave schedules, but also their accrued leave balance. So they're obviously not then required to come to admins to say, hey, what's my accrued balance as of the end of July? They get access to that information anytime they need it. So if I then jump back into the dashboard, I just want to kind of cover briefly, obviously conscious of time, the hours of rest side of things. So obviously you can see the overlap with hours of rest and leave here. You've got your hours of rest days shown in this calendar. If I jump over to the hours of rest dashboard, so I'm obviously on the leave section here. If I jump to hours of rest here, this will show me my month view of hours of rest, and it essentially shows me the crew logging their hours of rest. I can click into any day and see the days that they're working. And the beauty of obviously using both the hours of rest and the leave products is that if you're logging leave through the leave product, you don't then need to log it through the hours of rest side as well. It will automatically come through as a leave period that's been logged. So you'll only ever need to enter that leave period once, and they show up on the hours of rest side of things as a black leave period here, which you can see for these crew. So again, really nice cohesion between those two products as such. So conscious of timing, that was a whistle-stop tour of the workrest platform. If you have any questions or would like to see a more detailed run through, we're obviously happy to do that on a vessel by vessel basis. So do get in touch with us and we can set you up with a specific demonstration. I think let's jump back to any questions. I think there's a couple of questions that have come through. So let me just open up the chat and see if we can get some of those answered. So again, now is the time to answer any questions if you have any. We've got one here. So is there any difference between the different countries providing payroll services? I'm going to shoot this one over to Peter, if I may.
Yeah, sure. There are differences. The main one for the Channel Islands and Guernsey in particular is that the sort of idea that there's no social security contributions by the employer is recognised by HMRC. So it's not really a case of there's no tax. It's sort of recognised by HMRC, which is the UK's tax authority. So that's the biggest reason that employment companies exist in the Channel Islands. And then the second reason is we recently scored highly on our Moneyval evaluation, which is an European Council body which monitors anti-money laundering. So we're unlikely to be on a blacklist anytime soon, whereas some other jurisdictions may be. And And there's a long established framework, legal framework in Guernsey. So it's all
above the board. Yeah, perfect. Okay, thanks, Peter. That's brilliant. We've got another one here saying, how would we edit the leave balance if we pay out crew leave at the end of a year? That's actually a good question that we get quite a lot. So let me just go ahead and show you how we would do that. So if I stop share on there, I'm just going to jump back to the dashboard. And okay, right. So I believe, so question was, how would you, so let's say you pay out crew leave at the end of the year as such, how would you change the balance that you have in the system? So to do that, if I jump to the summary page here, you'll see one of the columns here is highlighted as adjustment. So this column allows you to add a leave balance adjustment at any day and time. So if I click into it, let me just do that here, you can add in an adjustment. So let's say the use case might be that you're paying out a leave balance as of the 1st of June for this crew member to say at the end of their contractual year, we're going to pay out leave balance. And then you can add that here. And then what that will do is then subtract their balance as of the day that you've set. And that's essentially how you would go and interact with the balance if you need to make any adjustments or edits to a leave balance. Again, this one does happen really frequently. So yeah, good question on that front. We have another question just in relation to when crews, is it possible to have actual days on board visible rather than only leave periods? So again, this is one we've had quite a few times. So when looking at the Gantt chart, if there's nothing within the leave periods, that is essentially saying the crew member is on board the vessel, so they are working. With that said, we do have plans to overlay this, I'm going to say clear period in the Gantt chart with information as to how long in between those leave periods the crew member, the duration of time in between those leave periods, so that we understand for rotational periods, you may want to see the number of days in between these particular rotational periods. So we do have plans to overlay that information to kind of give you guys access to seeing those exact kind of rotational onboard, offboard scenarios that you may get over the course of the year. Another question regarding HOD's forward planning. So at this stage, I'll talk about where we are now and then talk about where we're coming. So I think the question here relates to, obviously, if you're planning leave, this is obviously a live Gantt chart. So if you schedule leave in this Gantt chart as of today, it will update into the crew members app for them to see as scheduled leave. Obviously, if you're planning leave and you want to plan and adapt and change things before it then is scheduled as official leave, essentially at the minute you would, essentially at the minute, if you schedule leave, it will go through and it is scheduled leave that crew can then see. We do have plans to add in we're calling it a planning mode, but it will be a toggle that sits at the top of the page that will allow you to toggle it on or off. If you toggle it on and you're in plan mode, you can essentially add leave schedules, and then it essentially will only be visible on the dashboard. It won't go through to the crew members app, which will then allow you to plan and get HODs to kind of play with schedules before they go live in the system as such. So certainly keep an eye on that one as we update that and bring it into the system as such there. So conscious of timing, I think we're pretty much there. But obviously, if you do have any questions, do feel free to get in touch with us. After this, again, we can jump on another demo video as and when you need to. I think otherwise, I will thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.